I think key to all of this is the issue of background that we have, and to also emphasize that even as you see a data bank on the CV, that was a company that we started 30 years ago with $25,000. And today it has built up to managing under $1 billion of resources, and has 500,000 clients of Ghanaians, 300 employees, and 19 officers. And I think it illustrates, starting from Kantaman, to what Ghanaians can do.
Let me, with your leave, Honorable nominee, you were acknowledging Honorable Chairman Sabonsu and the team. It didn't come out. Very upset. He was acknowledging those who. He was acknowledging Honorable Chairman Sabonsu. Well, for emphasis.
For emphasis.
Charles, yeah, for emphasis. I know you would. The chief director and the team. Yes, there was some point. Yeah, I'm saying that for emphasis.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And Chairman, to even further state that I saw him holding a brown bag, which was really an elevation that he stepped into the shoes very well. And thank you for that. Really, it was amazing. I mean, a budget starts somewhere. Immediately we finish the media review, and we've been working on that. Given the hours difference, that means a 4 a.m. start in America, in which we work through the budget to go through cabinet for it to be successful. And just thank the House for the forbearance in having the leader do that work for us. Appreciate that.
Very well, the minority leader will start because he wants to leave us urgently, so please.
Chairman, let me also use this opportunity to congratulate the Minister nominee for Finance. Understandably, as we have read in the media and well but covered, to assure him of our prayers, but to know from him if he is fit and fit for the job of Minister for Finance. So Chairman, just assure him that he has the prayers of the country. Would appreciate knowing whether he can run the long haul today with us, if that is convenient for him. I know you have had discussions with us at the committee level. But Chairman, to warm him to the job, nominee Minister for Finance, the President in his State of the Nation address had this to say, and I quote, "Let me at this point assure the House that in the course of the session of Parliament, government will come back to engage the House on the steps it intends to take on the future of the Ajapa transaction." Why Ajapa? What's the necessity of Ajapa? What's the justification? What do you need money for Ajapa before I relate to other issues? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, certainly that is not a warming to to the process. We get right into action. I think I try to illustrate that since I got in on Saturday, we have launched the roadshow for the largest bond issue in our country yesterday, and to remarkable responses. We have also, during that period, began the issue of the merger of economic planning and us, the setup of Obatampa, etc. And then, of course, beginning with appropriations and preparing for this vetting. Really, for someone who has worked literally 18 odd hours a year since 2017, I just see no step down in what we have to do. I can assure you that the enthusiasm is there, the strength is there, and the excitement for the future since continues. I think public service is a duty that has its own energy and passion, and let me assure the chairman that there will be no lacks in the intensity of the work that we have to do.
So, Ajapa, how much money are you seeking to monetize, and for what purpose? What do you need that money for? And I just heard you, Chairman, his opening remarks that since he arrived, he's launched the roadshow for the highest ever. In what capacity did you launch the roadshow?
Minister Designate and representative of the president.
So I have taken note of that. Minister Designate launching raising $5.5 billion in the name of the Republic. I've taken judicial notice of that function and the activity.
Yeah.
Minister,
I also have a letter as President's representative.
still on Ejapa.
I hope that was noted also.
What do you need the money for?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I think with regards to Ejapa, there are a few things that we need to assure ourselves of. I think first and foremost, the President has said that we resubmit it to Parliament, and so that shall be done, which then opens up all of the issues that have been brought to bear. I think one thing I need to note is that truly, the basis of that transaction was an act that was passed, which was thoroughly debated, and we did not really move away from any edicts of that act. I think it is all of us looking at the state of the economy of a new normal, which seems to be global with regards to debt. And we're looking to interject equity into the way in which the country grows. But if you look at the powers of the fund, which this august House passed Act 978(3), the fund may create and hold equity interests in a special purpose vehicle, procure the listing of the special purpose vehicle on any reputable stock exchange, assign or transfer any rights of its mineral income to a special purpose vehicle, assign, transfer, or, so I think we are in the right course. But the challenge for all of us is, as you look at the new normal in which there seems to be quite a bit of debt by all countries. What do we do with our natural resources to leverage it into equity? And I think that's a question we have to face. Now, as to how that is mobilized, the issues we contend with, I think that's the reason why the President wants us to submit, so that there are issues around that. But philosophically, I hope we are all going to come to terms with the reality of diversifying how we capitalize and fund our transformation, which we intend to do.
Chairman, still on Ajapa, when the special prosecutor, Honorable Martin A.B.K. Amidu, submitted his report on the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption risk assessment of the process leading up to the request for approval of the transaction agreement and tax exemptions granted by Parliament, thereunder in relation to the gold royalties monetization transaction under the Mineral Income Investment Act 2018 Act 978. He made this observation in page 63. As I look forward to an Ajapa back to Parliament, give me assurance how you are responding to this quote. The Honorable Martin Hamidu had this to say: there is no guarantee that the sovereign minerals income royalties being ceded to Ajapa Royalties Limited without a national consensus and the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption assessment environment as herein before analyzed is not and will not be a leaking pipe in the public purse. Emphasis mine, a leaking pipe in the public purse. There is further no guarantee that it will not constitute a windfall from this leaking public purse pipe for those Ghanaians lucky through partisan affiliations to be represented on its management and who might have had stakes as promoters in establishing and incorporating it in the safe haven of JC aforesaid. A new Ajapa, how responsive will it be to these concerns that are raised? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think really there's quite a bit of cynicism with that transaction. And for me, for the House, for such a report and to be put out to the public without us or myself as Minister of Finance having a chance to discuss it, I think is a disservice to our democracy. And that is such a fundamental right that I think we all as a people should be careful about such things. And so the speculative issues and the risk associated with most transactions, discussions by resubmitting to Parliament would enable us to work those things out so that it is. But we should also note, I mean, beyond that, and the reason why I brought the Act up, well, the Act was well debated and put into motion. I think risks are part of every investment that you make. Parliament gives me the honors to go and raise bonds.
Honourable Minister, the distance between you and us here is far.
Yeah.
So kindly make sure, yes, you speak into the mic so we can hear you.
Thank you. So Parliament gives me a mandate to raise $2-3 billion with all sorts of risk. And so far, these 3 years, we have brought the best pricing that the country or comparable countries could enjoy. I do not know why that type of performance will then not reflect in the way in which that report was put.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, let me move, Minister. When our colleague, the Honorable Che, is here, has been struggling to submit to us, maybe your absence caused that, the annual debt report, which was part of what he laid on the 12th of March when he presented the budget for and on behalf of the President. The annual debt report, which is a requirement under the Public Financial Management Act. He spoke to our national debt. What is our debt asset today in relation to our GDP?
Mr. Chairman, I think we are all familiar with the debt in terms of coming in at about 122 billion and being about 292 billion today. I think what has been in contention is the way in which we categorize the financial services sector and the energy sector, which is identified in the books but not added to the public stock. There's been a lot of philosophical debates as to how to accommodate that. Our sense is that we are close to the completion of financing of both the asset management companies and the banking system, and therefore we should by the end of the third quarter or so, or end year, have those numbers complete so that we can add him on. And that will be helpful for the energy sector. In addition, there really seems to be a new normal in the world. Africa debt has moved from 34% to 56%. So beginning to equalize to have that standard after that period, I think is where we are leading to.
Chairman, that's appreciated, but the fiscal table, there is international accepted best practice, what is accepted, and the computation of debt. I heard you in 2020, I heard the Honorable Chair on behalf of the President in 2021, and you used the words that national total debt, excluding financial sector clean-up, further to my, not quoting, paraphrasing you again, excluding energy sector payment. You may have about 6.2 billion to 8 billion of that. That is not added. What debt is it? Is it a question of misclassification or not?
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe we are sort of making a mountain out of a molehill. The fact of the matter is that when you read the document, the fiscals, you would know what our debt liabilities are, and that is a fact. The question for any nation, is to determine how best we manage this. It's not, and we had argued with the international community that this is a special event, and until such time as we know the full cost of it, we are not going to add it together. We have moved to a point, as I've explained to you, that we are going to do, but never was it not disclosed.
Chairman, when you say you don't know, in both your budget 2020-2021, you attribute 21 billion as responsible. Why are you not adding that to total debt? It is known and is disclosed. What liability is it? And whose liability is it? We need to know.
Mr. Chairman, I think we could go on through this ad nauseum. The question is, was this disclosed? And it was disclosed. Could you add up to come to a summary? You will be able to add up to come to a summary.
So your position is that it's disclosed but not added?
Is there a new normal? There's a new normal. Have I told you how we are going to be doing it? And I've told you that once we are clear on that by the third quarter or fourth quarter, that will be normalized.
Will it be added on when you know the total?
We will be adding them on to how.
Will you readjust the fiscal table as we are assured?
Once it's added on, of course, it trickles through that.
There is a group working at the Ministry of Finance known as the McKinsey Group, working for GRA and working for the Ministry of Finance. What is the nature of the relationship with them, and how much money of state money has been used for them, and what do they do? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. McKinsey has been working with GRA, I'm not quite clear the date, but early on in the administration, and we also are working with them at the ministry with regards to how we are going to structure Obatampa, etc., and make it an efficient machinery for transformation. I'll have to get you details of payments, etc.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, how much did you borrow, or how much did Bank of Ghana finance government for the fiscal year ending 2020? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I think there was some anomaly. We did a 10 billion asset paper with Bank of Ghana.
So beyond the 10 billion, any other commitment from the Bank of Ghana to government that you are aware of?
Mr. Chairman, that was the main transaction.
So as far as you are concerned, only 10 billion was the amount the Bank of Ghana financed government. Is that correct for our record?
To my recollection.
And any figure to the contrary will mean otherwise that you are not candid to this committee?
No, it doesn't mean that, Mr. Chairman. It means I'll check on that number and let you know.
You didn't check before coming? Just 10 billion? I know for a fact that it's not 10 billion.
Well, I think people have been talking about 22 billion, etc.
Not people. You are Minister for Finance and Minister for Finance Designate. What are the numbers? How much did the Bank of Ghana finance the government of Ghana? When you came to borrow the 10 billion, you referenced the Bank of Ghana Act and the limits within as a percentage of government revenue in the previous year which could be used for that purpose. How much did the Bank of Ghana finance government? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I will stick to the 10 billion. Any explanations of other, I'll get to the House.
Chairman, the Minister for Finance in his mid-year review repeated in the budget for 2021 talks about the Obatampa 100. Share with us this year how much did you allocate in your budget for that purpose? Obatampa.
Mr. Chairman,
Gaga, give me your budget copy, page 242. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the Obatampa program is a 100 billion CD program, which in essence is the largest development effort any government will be seeing. The issue going forward is how do you fund such programs in the new modern world or the new normal that we see. And what we did was to say that we will have a committee, a different entity that's working within GRA to look at how they can raise an additional 30 billion outside of what they always raise for government by looking at other resources that we have not, and then 70 billion which will be public-private sector led. In this regard, we'll be working very closely with GIPC to determine partners in the international sphere who will then bring this type of resources to bear. You will notice that we are creating a new national development bank, which will be a wholesale bank that in itself will be able to raise funds to be able to support the various financial institutions in Ghana that will further support that. So really, I think that the challenge for a country given our savings and our capacity for domestic revenue mobilization is, as you see our attractiveness in the international market, how do you leverage on it to be able to build up this
Chairman, this is a follow-up. You've just hinted at National Development Bank, Agri Development Bank in distress, National Investment Bank in distress. Convince me why we need a National Development Bank in Ghana, where you have these major institutions that were set up with probably about the same goal or objective that is not living up to expectation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think really the issue about mistakes in the past does not mean that we should be innovative into the future. If you now look at the financial landscape, you realize that, yes, the banks are doing better. Through GATT, we've been able to save some indigenous banks that are also operating. The question then is, how do they get increase in capital? So ADB was also supported. We've given some resources to NIB, and therefore ADB will concentrate on agric, NIB will concentrate on industry, and the National Development Bank is a wholesale bank, almost like KfW in Germany, which then has a capacity to bring in resources from outside to be able to channel into these organizations that you are talking about.
Chairman, just to follow up, is something that if he gets approved, he probably will have to work with the Attorney General to resolve a matter of national and public interest. You find ministers of state come to Parliament with agreements, projects, programs, not costed, no value for money accompanying them. They come for parliamentary approval, then they walk away with parliament that will come back for value for money. That has not served the interests of our republic. What will you do to ensure that any side thing, because normally the ministers will need your concurrent acceptance and approval to do that, to protect the public purse? Give me some assurance what you intend to do about that. Thank you. Working with the Office of the Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It is an issue that I think has been problematic for all governments. In this particular budget season, we therefore propose an expenditure commitment policy where the Ministry of Finance has worked with the AG's office to see a document that will be passed by Cabinet in the next Cabinet meeting, which really goes to say that, if this thing is not in your cost of goods or capex, it can be, unless you can prove that you can get money for it. So beyond the value for money issues is tightening and making the minister responsible for allocating, for finding the resources to be able to do that. If it's not in the budget, it can't be done.
Chairman, related to that is an unacceptable growing of judgment debts, all of it occasioned by an act of omission or commission on behalf of ministers of state. They commit the state and then abrogate contracts. The phenomena of judgment debt. What do you intend to do about that as Minister for Finance should you get confirmed? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think, as a corollary to the expenditure commitment issue would be a situation where you don't even get there because it can't even come through. But even with judgment, I think we have tried very hard to even renegotiate after the court's judgment. So yes, it's a leakage that we are very aware of and would like to blunt.
Chairman, I note that in this 2021 budget statement and economic policy, for some reason, Minister, there is no definite determination as is expected under the Labour Act of Tripartite, some understanding on public sector pay, whether adjusted upwards or maintained. That is not conveyed in this particular budget statement. So it appears to me that public sector workers and civil servants, local government don't know their fate yet. How come it's missing? Because I know since 2014, 2015, we've worked out a strategy where it allowed you to have sufficient time to including a determination of the minimum wage. What's your thinking on compensation generally post-COVID and in particular an their fate? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Mr. Chairman, you notice that we have had a relatively peaceful environment during this time, and that's because the two ministries have made a special effort to create a partnership with labor and employers which enables information sharing and understanding of where we are going as a government. And I think we have kept faith with that. And so, Mr. Chairman, I can assure you that we are clearly aware of the level of salaries that we have for our people. We also know the impact on our revenue. And by all means, we'll strike a balance that is sustainable to support us. So let me assure you that we would not compromise on fair negotiations.
So will there be negotiations?
There has to be negotiations.
Thank you. So, want industrial peace and harmony. Now, capping. You are noted for capping our funds in order to deal with what you call budget rigidities and earmarking. The GET fund has suffered from it, even though we are aware that GET fund borrowed 1.5 billion. The disbursement of it is problematic. Want to know how much of the amount have been disbursed, because GET fund contractors remain unpaid. They are in the queue long hours to access their money. Then still on capping the road fund. When the minister made a request to you for 1.8 billion Ghana cedis, you release only 1 billion in the name of capping. Don't you think that you are contributing to President Akufo-Addo's failures, particularly in the road sector, when he says 2020 year of road, 2021 year of road, and you are not making monies available for purpose of achieving that? What do you have to say to that? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I think the statement about Akufo-Addo's failures is erroneous. On the issue of budget rigidities, I think that is pretty obvious to all of us with regards to the revenue to GDP that we have, and therefore within that bucket and borrowing, how much we can really take around for everybody to have some resources to do. So yes, you can isolate, Mr. Chairman, specific instances in which certain accommodations will have to be made. But overall, when you look at the productivity and growth in our economy, you can say that on a common basis, we are doing fairly well. And then we'll need to adjust. Every policy has some idiosyncratic effect on certain areas. And we look to be able to solve them on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. The leader is done. He will be
With warm-up.
I thought you said you leave us for now and come back later.
With warm-up for him.
Very well. Yes, Nilante.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Mr. Nominee, let me start with a very important issue that is agitating the minds of many Ghanaians and other West African states. The U.S. and other Western nations have made recognition of LGBTQI rights as some of the conditions under which support will be granted to such nations. As the man who follows up on every negotiation the President makes on issues of our support, what is your take on this conditionality by the Western nations in order to advance support and aid to a country like Ghana?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm not clear that it's been established as a conditionality. But truly, I mean, for example, if you look at the decision the President took with regards to termination of PDS, in which $190 million therefore had to be left on the table, I think our sociology and our traditions are the most important enduring legacy that we have. And so we'll make decisions that suit our Ghanaian purpose so that we can develop in the way we want to develop.
Looking at our estimates, Minister of Local Government Committee, look at our estimates. We had something revealing. There was an overrun of almost about 46% of the budget for the ministry in 2020. Close to about 468 million cities as a result of increases, especially in donor partners' support. The answer from the ministry was that as a result of ceiling which was granted. Ghana has entered into agreements with these donor partners, so we know how much they are giving us. So why do we set a ceiling on such funding to result in overruns of the budgets at the end of the fiscal year?
Thank you very much, and I think that's a very insightful question. Once the COVID pandemic surfaced, most of our donor partners began to reprogram so that they were front end because the need to save lives and livelihoods was so important. And so that trickled through. If you remember, we were able to go through the IMF rapid credit facility of $1 billion. And the World Bank also facilitated things. So truly, I think the event of the pandemic, last year was an extraordinary year. We do not tell ourselves, we have to be clear on things that occurred. But that, Mr. Chairman, was one of the reasons, the reprogramming and reprioritization of donor grants at that time. Thank you.
Chairman, if you permit as a follow-up, when that happened, why didn't the ministry get back to Parliament on this?
Mr. Chairman, I would, we can send a report on that.
Mr. Chairman, my next question. You mentioned COVID. Were there some releases to RCCs and MMDAs for COVID without
Directly?
passing it through Parliament?
Mr. Chairman,
Outside the budget?
Mr. Chairman, I don't recall that. I know that we encourage DSCF to further support the RCCs and co. But I can check on that for you.
Report and then another check. Okay. Let's come home. Prices of almost everything on the market is going up. Everything. Why the justification for increase in taxes at this time when prices of almost every commodity on the market is going high?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mean, that is a very, very categorical statement. And I think we all need to verify the veracity of that. I think the question of taxes can be an independent question, not linked to that. I mean, we have proposed a number of taxes that you are aware of that would affect petroleum, which would lead to revenue for a Delta Fund for energy, for capacity charges, because we continue to have a gap between what ECG should be paying and what the rates are. So that was one, to make sure that we get the energy sector operational. We also have a huge sanitation problem that you all know about. And I think that is a health hazard for the years ahead. and therefore we are trying to. But the essence of the budget, when we say one year here, is that it's a battle cry for us to join together to look at growth and transformation as opposed to bend our heads down because of COVID. And the question is whether we can burden share and therefore move to sharing the opportunities that will come. Is there ever a good time for taxes? I'm not sure anybody will ever say that. Would we use the taxes to enhance productivity and growth to grow? I believe we will be able to do that. I think underpinning your question that everything has gone up is one of debate that we can have. But we need to move forward. We need to burden share. We need to create a society that also will share the opportunities as we grow. Really, Mr. Chairman, if you look at what the Ofori Atta government has been able to do between 2017 and 2020, it is phenomenal. If we had not built up the resilience, I think COVID would have devastated us beyond what we are seeing. So we move forward together. We bring these new revenue measures in place. At the same time, of course, we did cancel income taxes for drivers, etc. And let's see how we create a sense of productivity and share in the growth that we expect to have.
Mr. Chairman, my last question. Honorable nominee, this is very important to almost every MP here. In the Supreme Court ruling, Benjamin K. Podo Richikoshigan versus the Republic, the Supreme Court said total revenue includes revenue from cocoa, oil, and other taxes. And the Supreme Court said, under no circumstance should the 5% or not less than 5% release to the District Assembly's Common Fund should be touched. Why do you still exclude revenues from cocoa and oil in computing the 5% of total revenue for the District Assembly's Common Fund?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that is completely correct. I know we went through extensively recalibrating.
Your deputy knows is correct.
Recalibrating, to make sure that we're within the law. With your kind permission, we could sit with you and go through how we felt that we met the 5%. Our ministry will not be structuring transactions that will break the law.
Yes. Who is next?
Mr. Minister, please. Your deputy represented you at the Committee of the Whole on this issue. She's not a member of this committee, but I don't know whether Mr. Chairman will relax the rules a little and But the truth of the matter is that she appeared before the Committee of the Whole on this issue. And she knows that we have, as a committee, we have interrogated her on this issue. Mm-hmm. The 5% released to the District Assembly's Common Fund does not include oil receipts, cocoa receipts. And we are asking, why are you going against the Supreme Court decision?
Mr. Chairman, with due respect, I have offered for us to meet to ascertain whether this is true, and if there's any corrective measure to be done, we will do that.
Very well. And for those who are ranking members and who may have to go to their committee meetings, I'll give you priority. Yes, Agaga, after that I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, well.
Honorable nominee, just to illuminate the question my colleague Nilante van der Poy asked, the case of Podo versus the Attorney General. The Supreme Court was very emphatic in interpreting Article 2522 of the Constitution. And in doing so, the Supreme Court held that the total revenues of this country includes petroleum revenues. And they related this directly to the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, which creates two funds, the Stabilization Fund and the Heritage Fund. Now, the Supreme Court's view was that whenever those funds become available to the central government, like we saw when you moved this August House for the cap on the Stabilization Fund to be reduced to 100 million, you received 200 million directly. And so per the Supreme Court's ruling, 5% of that amount was supposed to be paid into the coffers of the District Assembly's Common Fund. Now, that was not done. Additionally, if you also look at the 2020 budget, an amount of 1,300 million Ghana cedis was transferred from the Stabilization Fund. No, so 5% of this amount ought to have been paid into the coffers of the District Assembly's Common Fund per the Supreme Court's decision in Podo Richard Kwashiga versus the Attorney General. That was not done. There was non-compliance with the Supreme Court's decision. And this actually forced or compelled the lawyers for the two Honorable Podo and Kwashiga to write to your outfit in a letter dated April 30th, 2020, to call for compliance. This has not been done. Honorable Minister, why have you failed to comply with a decision of the Supreme Court in all this important landmark decision of our highest court, the highest court of the land?
Thank you very much, sir. And I will certainly check on this. But you know, I'm not sure that our ministry is in the habit of not obeying rules that are set for the people. You and us, as we all know, had an extraordinary year in which revenues were down by about 13 billion and expenditures were up by 11 billion. And so there have been a lot of accommodations that we've had to do over that period to be able to come to where we are today. I don't know whether that was a victim of that or not, and therefore you know how to adjust for that if we did not comply. But really, I think we should be less choleric about these issues because we as a ministry are keen to meet our constitutional obligations in whatever way that we can within the budget. So yes, I would verify this and let you know. Thank you.
For the record, I'm reading the concluding part of the judgment so that it will guide us in the questioning on this matter. This is the judgment of the Chief Justice then, Ofori Atta. Consequently, we hereby direct that in calculating the annual amount to be allocated to the District Assembly's Common Fund, the defendant shall comply strictly with the provisions of Article 252, Subclause 2, as construed and interpreted in this judgment. Total revenue of Ghana for purposes of allocation to the District Assembly Common Fund shall include petroleum revenue allotted as annual budget support amount and non-tax revenue paid to central government. Total revenues of Ghana shall not include foreign loans and grants, petroleum receipts paid into Heritage and Stabilization Fund retained, IGF, and levies imposed by Parliament for specific purposes under an Act of Parliament. Honorable Minister, are you complying with this interpretation and directive of the Supreme Court?
Mr. Chairman, we are. I mean, there might be a specific issue that has been mentioned right now that we'll examine. But certainly when we did our budget, I know we had about 2 or 3 sessions in the ministry going through the tenets of this ruling and how to make sure that we comply with it.
Yes, good.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable nominee, let me take you back to the Ejapa Minerals Royalties transaction. So far as that transaction is concerned, Honorable Minister, I'm sure you are aware by now that the former special prosecutor impugned the appointment of the transaction advisor, Imara Holdings, as having not complied with constitutional provisions and Article 1815 due to the fact that Imara Holdings is an international company. So he impugned the appointment of Imara in that regard. Now, you are thinking of, or your policy is to reintroduce the Ejapa royalties deal. Can you give us the assurance that in seeking to appoint transaction advisors in the future, you will be compliant with Article 1815 of the Constitution and the decision in Attorney General versus Faro Atlantic Company Limited?
Mr. Chairman, I think I mentioned a fundamental flaw in the approach that the OSP took with regards to whether he gave us a chance to respond or not. And I think that should be your keen interest for this House as just a rule of law. And so to then go on to accept, acknowledge a document in which your citizens were not able to give their views on that, I think it's something that we should not encourage. I do not feel that we broke any rule, and I think the AG will be able to give you a firm assessment of that. I think such conjectures, are inimical to growth, and it does not help the kind of freedom of policy orientation and innovation that will require for this country to grow. Mr. Chairman, if you consider that Ghana is the largest exporter of gold in Africa, and still this is the nature of our industry, I think it stands to pause that something different must be done. And something different must be done within the remits of our Constitution. And that is why we are resubmitting to find out the things. But I think the philosophy of trying to get more equity, trying to leverage our resources, is something that we should all consider and know that it's important for us to transform. And I do not believe that we broke any rules by the way in which the procurement was done.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up. Perhaps I may term it elucidation of some material fact. You see, Honorable Agaga had referred to Imara's involvement in the whole Ejapa and expressed, repeated the opinion of the special prosecutor to the effect that since that constituted an international, it's an international entity, government of Ghana's involvement in the amount of an international transaction, and the ministry was in breach of Article 1815. But just for the record, what that opinion did not advert its mind to was the decision in Esebe Yeboah versus ECG. And for the avoidance of doubt, in the Esebe Yeboah, ECG and Car Power were entered into an agreement, and government of Ghana even issued a residual guarantee. But the Supreme Court's position was, to the extent that it was the board of ECG that took that decision, notwithstanding government of Ghana's residual guarantee, that could not come under the remit of Article 1815. Therefore, the view that even Ejapa, by virtue of MIF being enacted by Parliament and being given the mandate to undertake transactions which included the Ejapa, it didn't even need to come to Parliament. So, Mr. Nominee, would you say that it is as a result of your desire in ensuring transparency that made the ministry even bring the Ejapa to Parliament in the first place? Would you say so, in view of the position of the Supreme Court in Esebe Yeboah, which clearly had indicated that such a transaction per its board does not have to come to Parliament? No.
Thank you very much for that elucidation. I think what I would like really to establish is that in the mandate given me as Minister of Finance, I have no interest in breaching the Constitution. And therefore, in the same vein in which we did a transaction in February 2017 with regard to the 2.25 billion equivalent CDs, in which a whole brouhaha was raised, and we went through Shraj for us to be proven to be innocent. I think it is that mindset when I sit at the ministry, and that I think of protecting the public affairs and ensuring that this country moves forward. So I would really encourage some forbearance on that, because I think it sometimes poisons the public to think in a certain way, which then blunts innovation and creativity for the future. And I think we are lost for that. You look at cocoa, for example, in which we have been stuck in working within the 3 billion bucket of seed money, while the industry is 140 billion, and there has been no sit down really by us in this august house and politicians to really look at how we can gain more from that is problematic. But I think once these sort of accusations are brought, it is tiring and it leaves one just doing the mundane. So let us, as a people, get into a narrative of questioning whether the current uses of our resources are the best way to use it, and find a way to get more equity into our system, but ensure that we follow the rules.
Yes, you may continue.
Honorable Chair, I want to clarify an issue here. My question relates with Imara, the transaction agreement, distinct from the mineral royalties deal, the Ejapa deal. The Ejapa was brought before Parliament. Parliament approved same. But the Imara holdings, which is a transaction agreement, the mandate agreement did not come. So that was the focus of my question, but let's make progress. Let's make progress. Yes, honorable nominee.
I mean, I think, Mr. Chairman, there's also materiality. Okay.
Honorable, please, that was not a question. He says he was declaring to ask. He will ask his main question.
Thank you, sir.
One issue which directly relates to Imara Holding was the partnership data bank forged with Imara Holding as transaction advisors. Now, many people got agitated with the involvement of data bank because of your previous association with data bank. You are co-founder of data bank. Now, to lend credence to this agitation, data bank then decides on the 10th of February 2021 to withdraw from the Ejapa deal as a transaction advisor. Some of the reasons data bank canvassed for its withdrawal was that some political actors sought to make capital out of their involvement as transaction advisor because of your status as a co-founder of data bank. Honorable nominee, with hindsight, would you say the participation or the involvement of data bank as a transaction advisor amounted to conflict of interest?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that's an area that, I've already alluded to, that the House should be clear on passing the Act. But the question that really that we should debate, I know that in my capacity as a public service official, without being a director but co-owner of that company, I was not part of any decision making with regards to that. But I think we should be having, truly a broader discussion about Ghanaian enterprise, and therefore how independent and experienced entrepreneurs can join government at any point in time. So, Mr. Chairman, here is a company that is 30 years old. Here's a company that started with borrowing $25,000. Here's a company that started I guess, tantamount to a place you would not think an investment bank would start. But that's the resources a Ghanaian entrepreneur had to start that. After 30 years with 500,000 accounts of Ghanaians, 1 billion cedis under management, offices around the country, having participated in every Eurobond transaction since we started in 2007, are we truly saying that in the event of anybody becoming an attorney general, you can use your offices? In the event of being a finance minister? I think those are fundamental questions, and therefore, if the rules are clear on what you are talking about, I don't think we should encourage such cynicism because it just goes to poison the environment and we may lose good. I don't think there was any conflict of interest straight away because I was not part of the decision. I think the first-class nature of the institution speaks to itself. I think the Ghanaian entrepreneurial ingenuity that has brought it this far must be praised, and we should be encouraging our companies to grow so that we can begin to do the Eurobonds ourselves. Thank you.
My last question. Honorable nominee, our country at the moment is faced with the threat of terrorism along our northern frontiers. This informed the decision of our national security outfit to publish a framework for the prevention and countering violent extremism and terrorism in Ghana. In addition to this, the Select Committee for Defense and Interior was briefed sometime late last year on the, if you like, work on a draft national security strategy. One of the highlights of the strategy and the framework for the prevention and countering violent extremism and terrorism in Ghana is the lack of funding for the security agencies of our state. Now, in the national security strategy itself, the Ministry of Finance is required to establish a peace and security fund to help equip our security agencies so that they can position themselves in a manner that would make it possible for them to protect us. I omitted to add that the Gulf of Guinea has been adjudged as the most dangerous sea in the world. And yet, that is where our oil resources are located. Honorable Minister, if you're given the nomination, what strategies do you have to raise funding to equip our country's security agencies in the face of the threats that we are currently faced with? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's truly an excellent question. Thank you. The issues we face, that is a gap between our savings, and as you know, we are running a budget deficit, which therefore goes to suggest that there has to be some accommodations and repurposing, etc., to be able to do that. But I think over the period that we talk about, both the Ministry of Defense, Interior, Fire, etc., have gotten more resources than they have. We are funding forward operating base to be able to tackle the issue of protecting our oil reserves. But within the sort of the Accra Initiative and the Ghana Boundary Commission and various things we are doing, is certainly to look at national security, because to be able to maintain our status as a pillar of stability and democratic governance, there has to be security. We also are at a point where I think the ECOWAS protocols enables our neighbors to literally stay here ad nauseum, without the 90 days. And given our attractiveness, I think we're going to have more of an influence. So there's a discussion that we are having to see how we can raise the appropriate resources for that. But I think that really, in a sense, should lead to some amount of empathy when you begin to ask about some places being capped or uncapped, and measure it against, the potential cost of this that we have to do as a nation. And so we need to broaden the dialogue so that we are all on one page on certain issues, and we can argue on the margins. And I think in countries like Norway, 80% of the issues are shared between government and non-government in terms of opposition. And then we talk about the other things. But this is a classic example of choices and repurposing that we have to do. But as you are seeing, I think we have put more resources in the security agencies than other governments in a long while. The FOB is being built, and certainly the National Security Fund will be established and resourced in the coming year.
Yes. So, you may now ask your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It seems our colleagues today have left their questions only to us. Honorable nominee, in your response to questions on taxation, you seem to have suggested that there is a need for us to share the burden brought on the economy as a result of COVID. However, a careful analysis of various allocations to government machinery does not share in your suggestion. For example, I tried to look at the trend from 2016. Under your watch, the allocation to government machinery alone has increased by 937.73% over the 5 years. And this has been published in yesterday's edition of the BNFT. And quite apart from that, when you look at the allocations between 2020 and 2021, it also increased by 504.85%. This clearly does not show a mark of a government that is willing to share burden, or that is willing to cut down its own expenditure as a way of commiserating with the citizens who are being taxed. What would you say to that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The linking of taxes to OGM, I'm not sure where that is, unless you are suggesting that the OGM is profligate and uses money in a way that does not support.
Not quite exactly. I'm only asking that with reference to what you said earlier, that the reasons for the introduction of the taxes is because we want to share the burden. But I'm saying that once, as a policy, you are willing for people to cut down their expenditure and pay more in taxes, government by itself or the OGM is not willing to reduce its own expenditure. And that is what I want you to respond to, Mr. Nominee.
Yeah, I think maybe a deeper analysis may require us to understand the responsibilities or irresponsibilities OGM has taken. Clearly, you can see the adjustments in the number of ministries that government is making, etc. So I think that would require some insight as opposed to isolated numbers as to exactly the increment in mandate and what it is that is happening. So yeah, I wouldn't, ascribe this to a disproportionate burden sharing as a policy, but truly, I think the burden sharing is something that we should all embrace and make sure that the transformation of our country goes on. But I would certainly examine that. Thank you.
As a quick follow-up to that, you will recall that sometime in 2020, there were several other ministries that were run at the presidency. For example, we have the Intercity and Zongo Development Ministries, we have the Business Development Ministry, we have the Monitoring and Evaluation. And all those ministries, as we speak now, are no more under OGM. And yet your allocation is increasing.
Thank you very, very much for that. I think we should check our appendices for some of those. Yes, some of those are out, and certain other obligations, are being taken on. I think we have learned quite a bit between 2017 and 2020 with regards to effectiveness of execution, and therefore there are some areas of government work that will still need to be deployed to make sure that the President's vision is realized.
And I would nominate, my second question was still, oh no, it was a follow-up. It was just a follow-up. It was just a follow-up.
Do you want to ask?
It's still on the.
So leave us to ask.
No, it's still on the taxation. Now, as a response to the imposition of these various taxes, it's been reported that Mr. John Ewa, who is a chief executive officer for the Ghana Association of Bankers, has said that elsewhere, when such taxes are imposed, there is always time giving. Some space, some breathing space given to businesses before we actually start implementing the collection of those taxes. What would be your response to that, given the fact that the same reasons why we are introducing these taxes also applies to those businesses? Their cost of operation has gone high. They are all victims of the COVID situation. So they are not isolated from the effects of COVID. So how would you respond to that, and how do you take their concerns into consideration in dealing with the tax issue with businesses?
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Ewua must know that usually when Parliament gives us a go-ahead for these, it doesn't take immediate action. So I'm not sure he's saying something new. And you also realize that we had a tax deductibility element for tourism and hotels, etc. So truly, I'm not sure, any citizen really has a lot more empathy than we have when we sit down and draw up the way forward for the nation, and therefore are very aware of the difficulties in industry, individuals, etc., before we put us together.
Honorable nominee, the last but one question has to do with the banking sector. The banking sector cleansing. Many watchers have described the banking sector cleansing as not wholly fair and not wholly in utmost good faith. And I'm citing one particular example with respect to Unibank.
What about it?
Honorable member, you know that the issues first they are pending court, it's pending before arbitration, and Parliament has set a committee to investigate that. Can we leave those matters for those committees so we don't make prejudicial comments, right? So can we ask another question?
Very well considered. Well, I mean, the aspect that I was going to ask, I'm not sure would have prejudiced the outcome of that, but I concede, Honorable Chairman. Honorable nominee, in presenting the 2020 budget statement, and this statement was presented before Parliament.
Mr. Chairman, could I take a bathroom break for 2 minutes?
Red Radio. Red Radio.
Do you have an insurance policy? What type are you